provide her with the central auditory processing evaluation that can be ruled in or out of her program. If she needed particular approach with respect to her education, then we needed to know that, because you can't just say, oh, this is a child, she was classified as having specific learning disabilities. This is a child that has specific learning disabilities, this is what we're going to give her. If there's other areas that may be causing for her to have specific learning disabilities, all of that needs to be considered and all of that needs to be looked at. And often parents don't know what kind of evaluations they can get, what a school district supposed to do versus not do. And in this particular case, thank God that my client had somebody that basically was able to tell her, review the evaluations that were done, review the neurological report and say, well, this is an important evaluation that needs to be done by the school district in order to determine what is the appropriate approach to your child's education.
So you lend expertise. Let me ask you, in our remaining moments, it seems like the testing, the evaluations, certainly bringing in legal help can be very expensive. And so for those people who don't have the money, first, let me ask you, is the testing an expense that the parents must take on, or does the school district pay for the testing?
The school district usually pays for the testing, and the school district can even pay for a neurological evaluation if the parents would like to ask for it. Sometimes parents get it on their own because that's often the way that they get in the door,
right,
that they have something based on which they can compel the school district to evaluate their child. If they're not progressing, or they're not progressing to the extent that the parents feel they should be. They're not doing as well as they should be, and there's something standing in their way. But usually that expense is bared by the school district once it is determined that the child will be evaluated.
Okay.
And so subsequent to those evaluations, if they are determined as eligible to receive special education-related services, there will be an IEP meeting, an individualized education programming meeting. A parent is entitled, or parents are entitled, to be part of the collaborative process in determining what the appropriate individualized education program for a child is or will be.
And they have a right to go to that meeting with counsel.
Absolutely.
Now, if there are people who are watching this and they say, I can't afford a lawyer, but I don't have the expertise myself, they are very interested in making sure that their child has the best possible education. I'm assuming sometimes, because of the work that you do, you find school districts who disagree with parents.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's often the case. That's why the parents usually will come in and seek an advocate.
So what about those parents who wish they could have another voice, but they can't afford private counsel? What's available to them in the state?
They have things. There's advocates that are not attorneys that are all over the state, and their rate is usually lower than an attorney. The parents, again, if they've become educated themselves, they can try to maneuver and represent themselves within the system.
Right.
Often, however, there may come a time when they do need to hire an attorney in order to take the process through, in order to file for an impartial due process or mediation, in which often cases are settled or tried, and the administrative judge within the administrative courts will determine what's appropriate. There's other advocacy programs. They can do research. There's legal legal state mandated advocacy program that can, depending on their income and their situation, provide them with an attorney. But I think I don't know that much about that area, but I think they have to qualify depending on their income.
How much money they make and what their circumstances are.
Right, as to whether or not they will be able to get that. I also know another source, interestingly, there is a special education clinic at the Rutgers Law School.
Right.
And it's ran by an attorney and her students. I think it may be ran by a couple of attorneys.
I think Professor Trachtenberg used to be in charge of that, and now there are others who are involved.
I think Esther Canty-Barnes also participates in running that that clinic. And it's interesting because what they do is they will take on cases, and I don't really know, what kind of cases they will take on, but they will help parents sometimes in fighting school districts by virtue of their students preparing the pleadings or going to argue on their behalf. Now, I don't know if they are capable of going to an IEP meeting. They probably are if a parent says that this is an individual that's familiar with the circumstances and has significant or important input into the child's individualized education program. They are entitled to bring somebody like that to the meeting with them under the IDEA and the New Jersey regulations. So there's different ways of trying to get help.
Another minute or two left, and I just want to recap for the audience. So you're saying that in the state of New Jersey, if you suspect that your child has a disability, then there's a way you could get tested, either
Yes.
neurologically, physically, emotionally, whatever.
Speech, right.
And that if you can show with confidence to the school board that your child does have special needs, you have a right to an equivalent education.
Yes, you have a right to specialized education for your child, for them to be educated and
So that they
provided
can
with
learn
absolutely
for free.
Yeah.
And that if you can't fight for this, or you feel that the board is not doing the right thing, you can have an advocate.
Yes.
Either in the form of an attorney,
Right.
or maybe another professional.
Yes.
And in the last 30 seconds we have, I know there's a huge area we haven't even got into. There's just so much related to education law. What would you like to tell our audience? What good advice can you give us?
I think it's important for parents to become educated on what their rights are and what the rights of their children are. And it's not difficult to do some research and determine, figure things out, determine what their child may be entitled to. And while it's important to mention that under the IDEA, their child may not be entitled to the best possible education, but they are entitled to a meaningful education, whereas they will be able to learn whatever it is that they need to learn. And for some kids, that education may mean academics, but for other kids, that education may mean how to maneuver within a society that they live in and how to get from place to place safely, depending on their disability. So no matter what your child's makeup or disability may be, you may have a right to get certain services and certain education, like I said, either academic or travel. It's called travel education, where children who may not be able to learn academics, but they have an opportunity to learn to be aware what environment they live in and how to maneuver within that environment safely, or a combination of both. I think that it's important for parents to become educated on what their kids can get. And in most cases, your child, no matter what their disability may be, will be entitled to an education one way or another.
And thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for watching Law Talk Today. I'm Dan Agatino, your host. Please tune in again.